Hi and welcome to the vlog. This is going to be a slightly different vlog to the usual cruising ones, in as much as it's all going to be about buying a narrowboat. I've been asked a lot of times, about the process of buying a boat, what's involved and everything else. In fact, last week I got an email from one viewer saying that he was keen to try and get into the narrowboat lifestyle, but really didn't know where to start. So I gave him a few tips and pointers based on my experience, and I thought it would be nice to share it with you all. So what's the process? Well, first of all, if you're thinking about buying a narrowboat, I suppose you would have already thought, well, it's something that I'm interested in, it's something that I want to sort of look into more. Now, whether it be that you've got a house and you want to sell the house and buy a boat, or whether you've got a house and you want to buy a boat in addition to your house. So it depends whether you want to live full time, whether it's just more like a leisure boat. Are you going to moor it in, a marina or on the side of the canals, along the towpaths? Are you going to be a continuous cruiser? So there's a few things to consider, basic things to consider. And then obviously comes the big one, that if you've decided that you would like to sort of look into it a little bit further, you need to start thinking about budget. Now, budget really is something that is, different for all people. Obviously, we're all, restricted by what we've got in the bank or whatever. You've got to look at it from the point of view that you can buy a narrowboat for, let's say, a lower end, about £10,000. You can go and buy a brand new one, have it sort of custom built for you, and it's going to cost you 150, 200, or perhaps more. Obviously, if you're going to buy one around 10,000, you really and truly, you're looking at a project boat. There's always exceptions to the rule, and you might just touch lucky. Someone wants to sell a boat quickly for whatever, they might have their own problems and they need money. I don't know, but there's exceptions to the rule. But generally speaking, if you're going to go down to the lower price ones, you're more or less buying a project boat, which means that you're going to buy a boat that's either got problems with the actual hull and the superstructure, or it's going to have a pretty poor interior, or maybe no interior at all, and you've got to go in and start to fit it out yourself. Obviously, as you go up in the scale, you're paying more money, you're going to get a better boat. So you've got to decide whether you want a boat that you can literally just go straight on and start to enjoy it, or go on and start to live on it straight away, or whether you're buying a boat because you think the lifestyle is good for you, but you're also looking for a project. Maybe you're a keen DIYer and you want to combine the whole thing. So they're the basics, if you like. Then, having decided that you want to sort of move forward, then you've got to start doing your research. Now, obviously, you can research online. If you go online, you're going to find, marinas that are advertising, brokerages, boat yards and things like that, even private people sometimes. So you can go on and you can get an idea of what's on the market at what price. Often you'll see pictures of the interior and the exterior, etc. So it gives you a rough idea. So once you've got the idea of the sort of boat that you want, then you need to start going and looking at them in the flesh. You need to go around to the boat yard, the brokerages, etc., and look at a lot of boats. Don't just go and look at one or two, because there's no such thing as a perfect boat. I think whatever you buy is going to be a slight compromise. So one, you're never going to find, as however long you look, you're never going to find absolutely perfection. Equally, you could go and look at a boat and think, well, yeah, it's more or less what I want, but not 100%. In which case, you could modify it, you could change things inside if it's more or less what you want. So don't discount something because it's not quite right. Okay, so then after a period of time and looking around a lot of boats, spending some time on them, maybe you have found the boat that you want to buy. And this is when it starts to get a little bit serious, because what will happen if you're buying from a brokerage or a marina or a boatyard, etc., invariably, if you say, okay, this is the boat for me and I'd like to put an offer in for that boat, obviously you're going to negotiate a little bit, whatever the price might be, and try and get a little bit off. That's the way that it works all over the place. So you're going to negotiate a bit. But if you've reached a price that you're happy to pay and they're happy to accept, what they're then going to ask you to do is to pay a deposit. And generally speaking, they'll ask you for about £1,000. There are one or two boatyards, I understand, that will actually ask you for 10%. Could be a lot more than 1,000. But the majority, I think, will ask you for about £1,000. And bear in mind that once you pay that deposit, effectively, that's a non-refundable deposit. So you'd pay your deposit because that's what you want. And then the marina or the boatyard, etc., they would then take that boat off the market and becomes effectively your boat. Now, at that stage, you really need, and it's most important, you really need to get a full survey done, particularly if you've never owned a narrowboat before. And I'm assuming that the people I'm talking to are interested in this, are more or less, the newbies, if you like, into narrowboating. So effectively, you get a full survey done. The surveyor will have a good look at the boat. They'll take the boat out of the water. He'll inspect the hull for thickness, etc. They'll go all over the boat, and he'll come up with anything that's a problem or needs to be rectified. Now, obviously, if they're relatively minor things, that's fine. Again, if you buy a second-hand boat, you are going to find that there are a few things that you might have to do. But obviously, if you find something quite major, like, for example, it needs overplating on the underside or whatever, and it's a lot of money, then you can renegotiate the sale price. Now, obviously, if it's a major work or expensive work to be done and you can't renegotiate the price, then you could walk away from it and you'd get your deposit back, obviously. But if it's just minor things or, a relatively less expensive work to be done, then, you could still negotiate, but effectively then you buy the boat. So we've now got to the situation where you've had a good look, you've found a boat that you're happy with as far as what it offers you, you've had your survey done and that's come out pretty well. So you've now got a boat with a final price and you've paid your deposit. The paperwork has to go through. If it's on brokerage, obviously the broker will have to get in touch with the actual owner and then get them to do a bill of sale, etc. for you. But effectively, the process is going. Generally takes, a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, let's say, for the whole thing to go through. And then eventually there come the day that you go to the boat and they're going to give you the keys and effectively you now own the boat. Now, I do know that quite a lot of the brokerages and marinas, etc., if they sell a boat, they will allow you to moor the boat within their marina complex for 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, until you get your stuff on board and you're ready to go. But do bear in mind that it doesn't finish there as far as your expenses are concerned, because to own a narrowboat and use it on the canal and river system, you have to buy a CRT license. That's the Canal and River Trust. You have to buy a license. Now, there's various types of licenses depending on what you plan to use the boat for. For example, I've got a continuous cruiser license. If you are going to be moored up in a marina all year, it will be slightly different. Equally, you could go to the CRT and you perhaps could find yourself a long-term mooring along the side, and all these things make a difference in what you pay. Give you some idea, my boat Bubbly Too is 46 foot long, and everything on boats is geared by the actual length. But Bubbly Too is 46 foot long, and for a continuous cruiser license paid annually in one lump sum, it's around just over £1,000. Having said that, that was for the 23 to 24 season, or the sort of financial period. But from 24 onwards, and I think it's coming in around the April time, the CRT are actually going to be raising the prices for continuous cruisers. So that could go up to 1,250, 1,300. I don't know exactly quite what it's going to be, but it is going to be increased, and it's going to be increased over the next 3 or 4 years apparently. So that's something to bear in mind. So you need to get your CRT license, and in order to get your CRT license, you're going to have to get boat insurance. Your boat insurance will cover the boat itself, and in case of fire and things like that. But it's also worth having, if it's not already included in the insurance to cover your own personal possessions on board. So you've got your insurance, now you've got your license. Then you've got to worry about or consider the mooring. If you're going to be a continuous cruiser, then you don't pay for your moorings, but you do have to move on a maximum of every 14 days. And there are lots of places where you can only stay for 1 day, 2 days, or 7 days, but the maximum period in places will be 14 days, which means every 14 days you move on. And I think the current criteria, CRT says that in their opinion, if you're a continuous cruiser, you must move at least 20 miles per annum. Doesn't seem very far to me, that, but I think that's what the current sort of theory is. But you don't pay to moor. Now, obviously, if you're going into a marina, you're going to pay for mooring. As I said before, you can take a long-term mooring on the canal side, and you'll pay extra for those. Another thing to consider, particularly if it's the first time that you've had a boat, is the RCR, which is the River and Canal Rescue Service. Now, it's like an AA for cars, but it's like an AA, if you like, for a boat. And effectively, there are 4 different tiers. There's the bronze, the silver, and the gold, going up in you know, what you get for your money. And then there's one where you can just pay a fee. I think it's about £65 a year, but then you would have to pay every time you call these people out or whatever work they actually do. Whereas if you go for one of the 3 main tiers, say the bronze, the silver, and the gold, you do get a degree of, you know, call outs. So for example, I've got the bronze one, and you get, I think, 4 call outs per year, and they'll come and sort you out. And I think it's an important thing for the first year, because if you're not very mechanically minded, you've bought a new boat, you're a little bit uncertain about its history maybe, although you've had the survey done, but you could go out and a few weeks down the line you could have a problem with the engine maybe, or something. So at least you know that in that particular situation you can call the RCR and they'll come out to you wherever you're on the system, and they can probably get you going again. Now obviously if it's a major thing, they'll probably tow you to a marina somewhere or whatever, but I would say 9 times out of 10 they can come to you on the canal side and get you going again. So it's worth having that peace of mind, at least for the first year. I think that's really basically, you know, the process of, and a little insight into the way you would go about buying a boat. I just re-emphasise that, one, don't just go and look at 1 or 2 boats and then pick one. Go and look at a lot. Go to shows if you've got the chance. And you know, really spend some time looking at the various types. I mean, there's 3 main types of narrowboat. There's the traditional, the semi-traditional, and the cruiser. And it's worth having a look at all 3, because depending on your circumstances, for example, if you were a family, you know, you might consider the cruiser being the better style, because it means that, you know, you, your partner, or your children, or even your dog or whatever, can be with you on the stern of the boat. Whereas with a traditional and semi-traditional, certainly on a traditional boat, there's really only room for 1 person. As far as the semi-traditional is concerned, yes, you can get people on the back, because effectively there's sort of hidden seating, a bit of a standing area, but it is still more restrictive than a cruiser stern. So that's something to bear in mind. The other thing I would suggest, if you've never owned a boat before and you're a little bit wary, because, you know, steering a boat is a bit different from a car. Excuse me. In a car you've got a steering wheel, and if you want to turn left, you turn the steering wheel to the left. On a boat you've got a tiller, and if you want to turn to the left, the tiller goes to the right. So everything is completely the opposite to what you want to do. So it can be a little bit, you know, fraught when you first get on the boat. So you might want to consider going and taking a helmsman's course, which normally lasts 1 or 2 days. Obviously you've got to pay for it. A lot of marinas will have someone there that will be able to do that for you. They'll take you out, they'll go through all the basics of running the boat, looking after the boat, the daily checks you should do, etc. They'll also take you through some locks, so you know and understand how locks work, and all that sort of stuff. So that's another thing to consider. So I hope that's given you a little bit of an insight into buying a boat. If anyone's got any questions, I don't profess to be an absolute expert, but if you've got any questions, do leave them down in the comments, and I'll do my best to get back to you and answer those questions. And if you've enjoyed the vlog, please consider subscribing, because it helps me a lot. So once again, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks a lot.